All right, everyone, we are going to get started. I'm pretty sure that Chris just got his audio hooked up. I think I heard him rustling around over there. But I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I always enjoy having Chris on for an interview. Chris is definitely a huge asset to our industry. Not because he actually knows what he's talking about, but he really is the promoter within the industry of how to do things the right way, and is always there to assist everyone else and lend some advice and help where he can. So, Chris, I appreciate it. Thanks for being on today.
Hey, sure. Thanks for having me.
So I guess the first thing I should do is technically and formally introduce us. So my name is Rob McCoy. I'm the National Sales Manager for Holganix. I get to work with a lot of lawn and landscape professionals throughout the season, and there's many different seasons throughout North America. I get to pick their brains and see what's working for them, what's not working for them, and that could be from how they fill their trucks and use their equipment to what products they're using and how they're hiring people and all sorts of different things. So I try to bring that knowledge to all the people that I get to work with and try and guide them in a direction so that they don't have to make the mistakes that other people are making and make it a little smoother for everyone. And Chris is the COO of Harmony Hill Nursery. He is an arborist, one of the best around. He's been featured in Nursery magazine, actually a cover story in Nursery magazine. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, thanks, Rob. Chris Uhland. I am currently a Pennsylvania certified horticulturalist, which is the highest ranking qualification here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I got that a few years after college, and then with just accumulating CEUs, I became a certified arborist, taking that exam. And then I kept getting asked more and more questions, doing consulting gigs. So I had stepped out of my realm a little bit, went to California. I did the Consulting Arborist Academy out there. And then it took 3 years and I became a registered consulting arborist. A lot of people don't even know that that exists, but it gave me the credential where I do a lot of court cases, whether it's a local trespass, an appraisal, wrongful removal, anything involving trees. I am now a registered consulting arborist for that realm of the industry as well.
So, Chris, if I have like my neighbor's tree creeping in on my yard, I should just call you?
Yes, definitely. I do several of those a year, whether it's through a lawyer reaching out to me, a municipality reaching out to me, or a private property owner.
I actually just had a funny situation where a farm right behind my house, and they complained because we cut down a tree that was growing into the fence line. It was on our property. And they complained because it provided shade for their property. Sorry, the trunk's on my side.
It's amazing where everything started out, where I just wanted to, grow the best tree that I possibly could, learning as much about trees that I could, CEU classes through, university or School of Arboriculture through Morris Arboretum at University of Pennsylvania, just culminating. And now I'm a consultant as well to help landscapers, nurseries, and other people in the industry such as yourself.
Awesome. Well, thrilled to have you on, Chris. And I wish that we could see each other more, but this pandemic is definitely not helping us do that. But at least I get your voice.
Definitely. It was disappointing to not have the Mid-Atlantic Nursery Trade Show to see all the big players of the industry come together. But we'll push through this and hopefully get back to a new normal.
Excellent. All right, so what we're going to be covering today is, besides Chris and I just sitting here chatting, we're going to do an interview with Chris, learn a little bit more about what they do at Harmony Hill. A very brief introduction on what Holganix Bio 800 is. It's kind of one of the core and backbone products that we use, and we use it to make several of our products within our line. We'll go through some resources that we may mention in this, and then we'll have time for question and answers. And that reminds me, if you have a question, please put it in the chat box, so that when we get to that point, we can just kind of run right through there. And even if it gets answered at a later time, we'll still review it just to make sure that everybody has their questions answered. So, we got a little bit about your background, but can you tell us the story behind Harmony Hill?
Yeah, so Harmony Hill Nursery here in 2021, this is the 12th year we've been open. So it's not like I took over the nursery from like my uncle or grandfather or some other nurseryman that had retired. You know, we bought a fallow tract of farm ground that was preserved here in Chester County, Pennsylvania. You know, we're halfway between Philadelphia and Lancaster, right along Route 30, commonly called the Lincoln Highway, or even Lancaster Ave, depending on where you're at. We just started lining out plant material. You know, so fast forward till where we opened up in 2009. Goodness gracious, you know, probably the worst time you could ever open up a nursery with the economy just going through the tubes. And, you know, here we came with, you know, 8,000 trees from 2 to 4 inch caliper ready to go. So it was some trying times. We pushed through, we got it. 2013, 14, you know, the economy began to rebound. We had called out thousands of trees to get started again. And that kind of put us on the map of where we're at now with Harmony Hill Nursery. Instead of being just a big shade tree nursery supplying, you know, the Toll Brothers, the Ryan Homes, those guys, but now we've changed our format a little bit to where we are running the gamut from large shrubs like your winterberries, your viburnums, up to your shade trees, hollies, cryptomerias, and then something that we're proud of that you can see in the slide right here are adding some new cultivars that are coming to the industry. You know, J. Frank Schmidt, Plants Nouveau, proven winners. They're putting out some great new cultivars, and we're adding some of those to our production. So in the slide here on the right, you see what looks to be a red bud with a leaf that's off color. Well, it's not off color. It's actually a rising sun red bud. So this picture was taken the other year. It's probably about mid-June, mid to late June. You can see the foliage has the lush green inside the canopy, and then the outside it has the limey yellow with red to the new tips, that's how it grows. So it gives you pretty much 3 seasons of color, from the pink flower all the way through the growth of the new red fading to yellow to green foliage. And something else with Harmony Hill Nursery that we're rather proud of, we're not doing any breeding, but we're doing some plant selections, especially when we're doing some of our native plants, which are seedlings, open pollinated seedlings. And then we're always looking for something, see if there's anything different, anything new. We have 2 red buds that are in weeping form. We have a Stewartia pseudocamellia that's weeping that we're trialing to see how they hold form. And the one we're really looking forward to is we have a weeping blackum, Nyssa sylvatica pendula. It's not officially named yet, but it is in the Proven Winners tree trial program. Proven Winners is known for their annuals and perennials and some of their shrubs now that have come to mark the last decade or so. And the last couple of years, they've started getting to trees. So we are one of the vendors they're looking to bring some of these new cultivars to market for.
And one thing I want to mention, you mentioned the time of year. It was, I remember this photo shoot correctly. It was like 99 degrees outside that day.
Yeah, yes, I remember the shorts.
We were dripping with sweat that day. Cool. Let's jump on to the next thing here. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the protocol that you have to go through from planting to harvest? And I'm assuming that protocols can be different for different varieties of trees, but if you can kind of group them together to explain, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so when we get our liners in the springtime, the liners, anything that we plant out in the field, some nurseries, they're all bare roots, some they're in containers, some they're in grow bags. Well, we run the gamut. We have some trees that are harder to transplant that come in root maker pots, any type of, I shouldn't say root maker, air root pruning pot. We have several brands that we're using. So some plants have soil around the roots, some are bare root, and then some of the grow bags that we cut off. So all three products we ended up taking and we run through the same system. The same system using the Holganix product lineup. So in the springtime, we'll have all of our plants that come in from our different vendors, little guys, and we have a 500-gallon cattle trough, a trough that you could pick up galvanized from Tractor Supply or any vendor like that. So we'll mix up a slurry of the Holganix root stimulant. Everything gets dipped in that for anywhere from a half hour to an hour to allow it to soak it up and get fully hydrated. And then we'll take that out and plant it out in the field immediately. So we'll go through, we'll get everything straightened up, get the soil graded around every tree. So we have the root flare pretty much at grade. We'll stake everything. And then the first application that spring, end of spring. So we try to hit mid-June till probably like the 4th of July. We try to finish our fertilizer package. And again, we use the Holganix product lineup for that. And then, normal production cycles, keeping the weeds down through the first summer. And then fall, we'll actually put down our first pre-emergent application to keep the weeds away. That winter, we will start doing our pruning. So just before Christmas, and we're finishing up some of the stuff we're finishing up now. There's a few things we'll hit up later, like our hollies will tip up after Valentine's Day, but before they start to push new growth. Once we're done with our pruning, that's when we get into our fertilizing second cycle. So we'll use the Holganix product lineup again for a winter feed as well. So once we get done with that, everything pushes in the spring. We'll start to do some tipping of plant material that's still left in the field, like end of May, early June, and again finish that up by the 4th of July. And as soon as we're done with that, that's when we hop into our third cycle of the Holganix fertilization package with the granular out on the field. So most of our plants are in a minimum of 18 months, but realistically, we try to be in there that 24 to 30 month range. So we'll harvest in the spring and fall. There's been some other products that have been on the market, a couple decades. We've been using the Holganix liquid product to do some out of season harvest. I know that there's some products or some philosophies where you can't dig certain plants in the fall and forget about harvesting certain plants in the summertime. Well, we've been able to do a lot of trialing. We've made some mistakes along the way, but that's why we do the trials. So we've been using the Holganix liquid root stimulant in the summertime. Usually everything's got to be hardened off. So you're looking at second week in July till maybe the first week in August, when before the second flush of growth starts to push. We'll dig a trench around the plant, usually at the critical root zone. So you're looking around 20 away from the root flare. We'll dig a trench. So then that allows the soil to get, we'll do that one day. We'll come back a second day, and then we'll do an application of the liquid Holganix. So we'll normally put that in a tray. So the tray is around 6 to 8 inches deep, and it goes around the entire tree. So that allows it to soak in slowly, so the tree can fully absorb it as well. And then we'll come back usually the third day. We try to do our harvesting, between 6 in the morning, 6 and 9, give or take, watching the weather. If we can time that on a cloudy, overcast day, get it early in the morning, the leaves will really hold their turgor pressure a lot better. And then we'll harvest it, and then we take it right back into near our office. We have we call it the water pit, and that's exactly what it is. It's about a foot deep, and then we'll fill it up with water, and then again throw more Holganix in it, Holganix liquid, and we'll let the tree sit there for. I'd like to get a minimum of 2 days, and that allows more and more of the root stimulant to be able to get absorbed. What we're looking for is the plant to hold turgor pressure. If we're seeing the leaves start to wilt or turn black, obviously it's not gonna make it out in the landscape. but we've seen great results. We've learned a few things that we can't do, like maybe cherries in the summertime yet. But even last year, if you recall, July and August were pretty brutal. We were digging river birch in full leaf, and they didn't lose turgor pressure at all. So when you're digging a 8 to 10 or 10 to 12 foot river birch, and that holds full turgor pressure in July, you got something good going on, and we've got it figured out to a science there. And then even in the fall, we'll kick back in. Realistically, digging trees in the fall means that the leaves should become dormant. At least changing color, if not dropping. Where that envelope's been pushed the last several years as well, to where, hey, it's Labor Day, it's fall. Well, not necessarily in the tree world. So we'll kick in the same process of summer digging in early fall. In like mid-September, we'll start to dig through when the leaves start to turn or even become senescent for the season.
Hey, Chris, how much do you think that process is actually extending your harvest time? So say that you typically have 6 months of harvest time, and I can be using the wrong number. What's it changed to now because of your process?
It's probably added another 30% to our season. So in the springtime, we don't really need the Holganix, because it's just so great. So we'll start digging, weather permitting, end of February, early March, and then we'll really dig until the buds start to swell, and then you're shut down. I haven't been able to find anybody to really do too much beyond that. But once you get into the new growth hardening off there, like I said, the second week in July, that used to be a no man's land where maybe you could dig some arborvitaes, some pines and spruce, and hopefully the candles hold up on those. But now we've just opened up a whole new window for deciduous material that was almost a no-no, a decade ago. The old nurseryman would have scoffed. You're throwing those trees away. We've added a month in the summertime to harvesting, and then in the fall we're probably adding a month and a half to 2 months earlier that we can now harvest material.
Yeah, I was just curious because we see that in a lot of different industries where it's increasing harvest time. Sometimes it's speeding up the process, such as with like a sod farm, where they're getting the plants to maturity faster, and they're actually able to turn over their crops, for lack of a better term, quicker. So that's interesting that you actually get to extend your harvest time so that you can sell plants for a longer period of time throughout the season.
Correct. And even we used to, for our production methods, we don't have irrigation out in the fields. We do spot irrigating, especially our spot irrigating the first year when we line our material out, February, March, early April, we get those liners out in the field. We'll come back and we'll water as necessary the first year, and that's it. We don't come back and water the second or third year. And so having the Holganix, we're using the dip so the trees get established out in the field faster the first year. And then we're coming back and doing the supplemental fertilizing, February, March, and then June and July. So that's the only pushing that we really do. And we're cranking out trees. We're putting like an inch and a quarter liner out in the field, and we're turning that into a 2-inch tree 18 months later. That used to take us 24 to 30. So we're turning trees faster. So I figure it takes $22 a year to grow a tree. So if the tree used to take me 24 to 30, and now it's taking me half that, I'm saving anywhere from $22 to $32 a tree.
Yeah, it's all profit.
It is.
So obviously, and you can see the next question up on the screen. So everything leaves your place. You hear the horror stories coming back to you. Hey, something was wrong with these plants. This and that. Do you have any recommendations for installations? And I'm not even asking for you I'm not asking you to recommend Holganix. I'm thinking more in the procedural aspect of it, that you just see are common mistakes that are made, even by some of the best professionals out there that are kind of create a headache for you and for them and for the customer in the end.
Yeah, definitely. As a consultant, I'm getting called out to say, hey, why did these trees fail? Whether they were from Harmony Hill Nursery or from another grower. I remember in high school, I worked for a landscaper for a few years through early college. We rarely ever lost a tree. And that was one thing he took great pride in, and he wanted to educate me on that. So back then, they were using a root stimulant that was made, it's still around. So they would throw that in on the top of the tree, whether it was a field grown or a containerized tree, as well as a granular fertilizer, just to help get these trees started as well as further established. Working at Snyder's Landscaping right outside of State College, I was there 3 years, and I remember them saying about one or two trees that have ever failed. And even on my own, when before I came to Harmony Hill Nursery, I worked at Hanson Nurseries, and I was a young buck. I was adventurous, so I'd go do some side jobs here or there, and same thing. I rarely ever lost a tree, and I followed the same practices of a root stimulant when you plant, and then also an organic fertilizer or a slow release fertilizer to help get the tree started through the next few months. And that's what I do now. We do sell the Holganix product to our customers, and I think it's needed. I realize a lot of jobs are, whoever has the cheapest bid wins. The low bid process, I feel, is very detrimental to our industry, because everybody's racing to be the cheapest, race to the bottom. Where if you have good soil from the start, your trees are going to get established and take off. You're going to have fewer callbacks, and you're going to have plants that take off and grow, and people are going to call you back. They sold their house, they moved to a different house, whatever. They have a new construction, and they said, hey, I bought these trees from, Steve Smith Landscaping, and they did great for me. I'm going to call Steve Smith back again and plant more trees for me. They give gifts. They just keep adding to their landscape. They're going to keep calling Steve Smith Landscaping because the trees and plants survive. So when I get called out, I see trees that are just augured. You have a 24-inch root ball. They auger a 26-inch hole. They drop the tree in and pack the shale soil back around it, leaving the stones and everything in. So I'd recommend, obviously digging the hole. I realize some of the ANSI standards say 2 to 3 times. You got to dig that root hole really wide so that the tree roots can grow out of that and get established. Cutting the basket open, the soil or the string and the burlap, pull that back. If there is any soil around the root flare, pulling that soil away as well. I know, again, they say, hey, the nursery should have done that. Well, if you have the tree, you see that, pull the soil away from the root flare. I used to not think too much about it. It's a tree, it'll grow through it. But as a consultant now, I get called out on projects all the time where you don't see the root flare. You start excavating the soil away with my little trowel, 6 inches down. You had 4 or 5 inches of mulch, and then another inch or 2 of soil, and the tree's just circling and girdling itself off. So, making sure it's planted correctly with the root flare at grade that's exposed as well.
It's interesting you say that. One of the things, and it's actually funny that you mentioned the name Steve Smith, and you were using it just as like a general name. You were talking about the watering, the reduction in watering that's needed out on the nursery. Steve Smith is actually a guy that I know who is a golf course superintendent in Vegas, and he's a Desert Willow golf course. They actually hold some of the PGA putting competitions, so the greens are immaculate there. But they reduced their water bill by $26,000 in a year because of using the product. So, there's a lot to be said for how functional the soil is and how dense and useful the root system is, regardless of the plant type that you're working with. If the soil is good, the root system's good, you can pretty much grow anything off of that foundation. So it was kind of funny that you brought up his name, because I was thinking of specifically him before you mentioned that.
Well, yeah, something else to go along with that, especially with the turf industry. The soil is always there. With the nursery industry, every year when we dig the trees, we have, a big hole left. Some nurseries will just go through and plow the field shut, and then over time, the field soil levels will shrink. They get lower and lower, and you can go to drive past an old nursery, and you can say, hey, look how low that field is. They wet. They have drainage issues. Where our farm at Harmony Hill Nursery, good or bad, before we purchased it, the farm was preserved. We can build one house on it for forever. So one of the stipulations is as well with having a nursery, we lose its soil, so we have to backfill every single hole. So like last year, we sold over 5,000 trees off of our farms. That's 5,000 holes we had to fill last summer and this winter. So where do you get the soil from? So we try to find good soil. We have a few vendors we deal with bringing us topsoil, whether it's a new road's being built in a development, we'll get some of that topsoil. Landscapers will bring us soil from little patios and walkway excavations. But not all the soil is perfect. It's not that rich, lush, organic matter filled soil. So we'll mix some of our we do mix our soil with some leaf compost. So we backfill all the holes to at least get everything up to grade. But that means every single crop we need to do soil analysis for. And then we need to make sure we have the mycorrhiza and all the other elements that we had for the last set of trees for the next set of trees. And again, that's where making sure we have the right nutrient package back into our soil that's amended.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues that landscapers deal with all the time, is that they don't know what the soil condition is going to be like at the location that they're doing their install. And I think that's where the diversity of that Bio 800 product that you're using is really critical, because you're trying to make the plant feel as though it's in its native environment. You're doing that at the nursery. The variance that a landscaper deals with is even greater, going from one home site to the next home site. And it shouldn't be overlooked that from one side of the house to another side of the house, when you're doing landscaping, that soil type's going to completely change. I've just seen it too much that you can have a highly successful landscape on one side of the house and then have another side of the house where it's struggling because it gets different sunlight, different things survive in the soil, the grade can be different. So you always want to control what you can control, and that's why we're going over the recommended protocols. But when you look at the investment that you make in order to make that plant feel as though it's in its native environment so that it can thrive, it's really a minuscule investment for a landscape install. And one of the things that I think becomes critical when you're trying to grow your business as a landscaper, think about when you get your referrals from the jobs that you do. Typically, it's within the first month of doing that install, because that's when it's most noticeable. That's when it's new. Well, if you have leaves dropping, if you have wilting or anything like that because of transplant stress, then somebody's going to be a whole lot less likely to either steer you in the direction of a referral or be enthusiastic about giving a referral, because they're not quite sure how everything's going to last. And so making sure that those plants, as soon as they go into the soil, are still thriving at that point, are holding their leaves. If they're in the season where they should be blooming, that they actually have the opportunity to bloom, that they're not too stressed to do that. That's when you're going to get your referrals. That's when the job has to look the best. Not 6 months later, not 8 months later, not a year later. It has to look good then, because that's your opportunity for growth in business. So you look at I think I did an estimate for the average $20,000 to $25,000 landscape install. The average amount of product used of Bio 800 is about $20. So when you think about that, with a $25,000 job, you have to add in $20 into the watering in process in order to get that biology into the soil. When you put it in those terms, it kind of seems ridiculous not to do it. It's just a matter of finding the product, finding the process and using it and implementing it. But it makes a huge difference. It's obviously not going to change my world that, hey, somebody buying $20 worth of product, but it will change the world of growing your business. And that's really important. When we're, at Holganix, we're focused on, building up our landscape community. And those people that are working with us, we want to help them any way we can. it's a really simple process to implement and get those plants thriving, especially in a circumstance like, the care that you've been putting into those at Harmony Hill. And then you don't want to see that drop off once they've left your place. You want to be able to go revisit those and see them in even better condition once they've kind of found their permanent home.
Correct. Yeah, you'll see that in some nurseries, especially some of the greenhouse operations, where everybody's running irrigation, but in a greenhouse operation, you have typically you have the opportunity to fertigate. You're pumping water and fertilizer to plants, daily, sometimes twice a day, and so they look lush. They're beautiful, healthy plants that are coming right out of the greenhouse, out of the nursery setting, and then they're going plop right into the landscape, and they're watered once every 3 days. So it's like eating, caviar and having, the best drinks, and then all of a sudden you're stuck out in the desert and you have nothing. You got to you got to kind of run with the averages along the way, make sure that the plants are established using similar protocol from the nursery application.
Yeah. All right. So the next part, do you have any recommendations to landscapers and horticulturists that care for trees at homes or commercial spaces? So the maintenance contractor, not necessarily the person who's doing the install, but the person who's potentially, it could be a different company that's taking care of them after the fact.
Correct. Yeah. So if you look back at some of the history of landscaping, mulching. Mulching was a process that came through to mimic Mother Nature. You walk out in the woods, you don't see, finely groomed beds in the woods. You walk along a stream or swamp, you see the organic matter, the organic layers that are developing, and that's from the leaf drop from the seasons before. There's trees that have been become senescent and died, and now they're decomposing on the woodland floor. So they're adding the nutrients naturally, and so that's what landscaping needs to mimic. Using mulches that are typically undyed, have a little bit better nutrient package to them as they break down, versus the wood byproduct. Using pine needles, pine straw for the plants that could use that versus like the bark mulch, and then adding the fertilizer to them when necessary. Seasonally. Not putting fertilizer down in mid to end of September because you forgot in June. Maybe it's skipping it and waiting till the wintertime so you don't push new lush growth on plants that are going to burn off if you get a heavy early frost or even snow in November and December. Making sure you're watering at the right times. People, with the golf course industry, it's a little bit different. With the nursery industry, water early so the soil gets damp, gets moist, keeping the water off the foliage so you don't have fungal issues, keeping it lower underneath. So if you noticed, I think it was 2 slides back that Rob had, maybe it was 1 slide back, there was our above ground trees. And there was one main line with spaghetti lines running over top of each root ball. I'm a big proponent for having irrigation for plants to get established. Yeah, exactly, right there, Rob. So each one of those sticks has irrigation that goes specifically right to each tree. There's not excessive watering, that's sprayed all over, and it's concentrated right there. And that's one thing that I would prescribe to landscape contractors and maintenance professionals, having concentrated irrigation to the plants versus overspray. It's going to help the water get to the trees and not create water pockets and mud holes in other issues of drowning.
Yeah, definitely. I see that all the time as well.
Yeah, up here we have, like your quickie marts, the Sheets, Wawa, the Home Depot, wherever you go, you just see just the big irrigation just spewing everywhere. Try to concentrate that onto the plant material so we're not wasting the water. And, it's better for the plants to get the correct application.
Yeah. It's funny, I'm looking at this next slide, and that's Chris and I walking down the middle of that road right there. And I told you it was like 99 degrees that day, and I forgot that I wore shorts that day. And those are my gigantic calves that you see. You mentioned a lot of what the Holganix 800 has been doing for you on harvest time, and we talked about it with transplants. What about in situations of disease and stress conditions?
Yeah, so you'll see on the right side of the slide are yellowwoods, and then on the left side are columnar oaks. I believe those were Regal Prince oaks. Two pretty good, pretty tough trees. But you'll see on the oaks on the left, commonly you'll see insect damage, especially on the new lush growth in the summertime. You know, the insects are going after, you know, the best lush growth they can. You even see it just at the slide behind us. There's a residential development. You know, the homes are, you know, $750,000 dollar homes, beautiful homes. The one street, the one cul-de-sac is lined with linden trees. They've called me, hey Chris, you're the nursery guy, come over and look at our trees, and they're just no idea what's going wrong with them. I'm like, well, they're getting, you know, they're getting destroyed by the Japanese beetles, just eating all the foliage, you know, top to bottom, inside and out. And you know, they say, well, what do you do? Nothing. You know, I have a very minimalistic insecticide application that we run with because we don't need to. Our leaves are thicker. They're more lush than what they've ever been. I've even so the lindens on my property rarely ever have any issues with Japanese beetles. You know, maybe on the top you'll see maybe 5 to 10% that have some foliar damage from them eating. But normally, if you went to the development right next door, they're destroyed. In the very first slide I showed, or Rob had showed the red buds. The same thing with those. They'll start to wilt down. Even these yellowwoods on the right side in the summertime, you know, 95, 100 degrees, 102 with the heat index, they'll start to wilt down. They lose their turgor pressure. My second year out in the field, you'll rarely ever see my trees wilt down. They're just so thick. The internodal growth stem is very thick as well. They just don't wilt down. They just have the strength to them where they're able to absorb all the moisture out of the soil that they need.
Interesting. What about on disease? So you're covering, you know, insects with. Do you see that? You know, do you have any reduction? Did you have to use fungicides? Did you have it as a regular part of your program? Do you still have it as a regular part of your program?
Yeah, some of the fungicides, you know, that's kind of weather, caused by the weather. Damp periods, lots of rain. So we've had some issue with that, and again, our foliage just rebounds. You know, like my tree lilac, you'll see that. Even some of my shrub lilac, you'll see a smidge of it. But the trees are just so healthy; they just keep pushing through. My dogwoods, maybe some people might say, oh, well, you don't have them long enough for anthracnose. I'd figure if you're going to get anthracnose, you're going to get it. And my trees just push through it because they're so healthy, so viable. They're pushing strong. And when you have a tree that is healthy and stronger, it's not going to have the stressors. It's not going to get stressed out from the heat, from the excessive moisture that's sitting on the foliage. It's not going to be hampered by the stressors.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like you or I. You know, we take our meds one a day. Hopefully, it helps us be stronger and healthier.
Hopefully, I don't know what it's doing, but I have a feeling if I stopped taking it, then I would see what it was doing. So we've been talking a lot about Bio800 specifically, and even the granular products that you use. Just to give everyone a little bit of clarity, because some of the people on the webinar have been using the products and are looking for some other ideas as to how they can use them. Other people have never used the products before. So Bio800 is very simply BioLife 800. That's the minimum species count. We think that diversity is extremely important. We were talking about making a plant feel as though it's in its native environment. But really, that is going back to Chris's analogy. When you have certain nutrients available to you, and those nutrients are not as readily available, then that's where shock comes in. That's where the stress comes in. Well, that doesn't mean that those nutrients aren't in the soil. it means that they're not available for uptake from the plant. So having that diversity, adding that whole ecosystem into the soil makes it so that those nutrients can be converted into a usable source for the plant. And that's really what we're focused on. How do we utilize biology, use some of the other components such as humics and fulvics, amino acids, yucca, kelp, things like that are all in Bio 800 to create that thriving environment where you can have a plant feel that availability of all the different nutrients that it's looking for, regardless of what it's looking for. It's typically there, and then you just have adding sugar sources and things like that as well, so that we're not just adding the biology, but we're feeding the biology. And there's a lot of biological products out on the market now. But one of the things that I commonly see is that they fall into one of two buckets. One bucket is that you have one that is adding biology in the soil. But typically you're going to see, and not typically, this is like 100% of the time because I've not found any alternative to this. When somebody says that they have at max 6 to 8 different species of biology in the product. And the reason they do that is for the stability of the product, so that it's easy to store and it has longevity to it, with very little care, so it kind of falls into the same bucket as all the other products that you would use as far as storage and maintenance and usage. And then the other bucket that they fall into is sources that will feed biology, so that you're going to increase the populations that you have within the soil. We try and do both, where we not only have the biology, but we feed the biology, but we're also creating a massive amount of diversity there, where there's potentially not diversity, because we know significantly less about the soil than we should. As an overall community, considering how much we're working with the soil, the science is really not there to say, hey, this is specifically what this is going to do for this plant, and we know it works every time. We've got it figured out on the not completely, but we're a lot more advanced on the chemical side of things. And it's a shame, because if you just use the comparison of plants to people, it's with people, we know that we can have a healthy diet and exercise and things like that, and that overall health is going to be better for us. But it's really easy to just take a medication and work through an illness and get past that. And that's kind of what we've done in the lawn and landscape industry, is that we've taken the easy solution because we're out of solutions, or we don't have time to take the longer approach and really create a long-term solution. So the interesting thing about this, and a question that I get all the time, is with Bio 800, how long does it take to work? Well, Chris, you can probably answer this question, but it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But really, I've seen the product work in as short as 3 days, where you've seen a bounce back from and a recovery start to happen on a plant. Obviously, the larger the plant, the longer it's going to take to see some of that recovery. So it's easy to see with turf, but it's a remarkable thing. And I would never use the term it's like a miracle product or anything like that, but that term's been used with me when someone is really struggling to find a solution, and they say, you know what, I just don't know what's happening, in the soil. I don't know what's happening with this plant, and they use the product, and somehow, some way, it's solving the problem for them. And obviously, it's going back to that diversity in the soil. It's plugging some of the holes in that ecosystem to help everything cycle through the way that it should cycle through, and create that environment for the plant so that it can be successful and thrive.
Correct. Yeah, because the last several decades, we've added stimulants for this and that, which have locked up and unlocked other nutrients that are naturally there. where if you get back to the actual soil biology and fix what should be going on, it balances everything back out again. So when you're able to balance the ecosystem, the soil ecosystem, that's when you have that miraculous bounce back.
Yeah. And by the way, I put this out. I didn't even ask Chris about this. I just put his information out there for everybody. Chris is the type of guy who likes to talk to everybody and help them out when he can. This is Chris's contact info if you'd like to talk to him some more. I would also like to mention, and maybe Chris, I'll let you mention. So, Chris, where do you get your products from?
We buy our Holganix through Aquarius Landscape Supply out of Norristown, Pennsylvania.
So Aquarius has a bunch of different locations. So if you fall in the geography of like central to northern Virginia, all of Delaware, all of Maryland, and all of New Jersey, really, and then eastern Pennsylvania, if you fall in any of those areas, Aquarius is our longest term distributor. They have very knowledgeable staff that can guide you in the right direction with a product like this. So if you do fall in that geography, don't hesitate to reach out to Aquarius. They'll be able to fill your needs. They carry everything that we offer, whether it's liquid or granular. And if you need any of those specifics from Chris, you can pick his brain and shoot him an email and say, hey, I want to know exactly which version of this product you're using. And I'm sure he will be happy to give you that information. You can even ask somebody at Aquarius, I want to know what Harmony Hill is using. Can you tell me what they're using? And they'll give you the granular analysis. They'll give you the version of Bio 800 that Chris is using, if that's of interest to you.
Yeah. Adam Mellor, he's based out of the Norristown location and he travels. He's been a huge asset to us.
I'm sure that they will like to hear that. I'll make sure that gets back to Adam. So we talked about how you get your product actually, and if you are outside of that area and you will be using Aquarius, feel free to contact myself or one of our other reps, and we'll get you pointed to our nearest distributor. If you don't have distributor coverage, then we'll try and supply you the product some way, somehow. That's mostly in the central northern states, where we are supplying our customers directly. But I would say reach out to us if you're interested in getting product or just getting some questions answered about availability, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction.